transmission tune-up can save you from those transmission failure blues.
Avoid those transmission failure blues with Gibraltar's $9.95 tune-up special.
Okay, before we analyze Gender Chameleons with the young man named Steve Simels, whose readings and writings you can read in Stereo Review, Self, Redbook, and We, and National Lampoon and Video Review, and Crawdaddy. I thought it might be nice to reintroduce our charming panel. The man on the end who, you think he could play that? Could he play Henry Fonda's old part with that face? I think his name is Jonathan Cuminsky. Jonathan, will you be doing it in the East eventually, the one-man show?
Yes, in fact, it's available for booking in the East in case anybody's watching for private bookings. And yes, we're looking to have it taped and eventually have it syndicated. Richard Havens and I, as partners on that scheme, are working on it now.
And something fascinating has happened Off-Broadway. A smash happening has happened, right? It has come to pass. And Arnie Kolodner, give the name of the theater, and let's make some friends again.
Provincetown Playhouse, Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, Sleeping Beauty, or Coma.
We were talking with another one of the stars of that show, Miss Meghan Robinson.
Yes.
From where, Meghan?
Originally from Wilton, Connecticut.
Local girl?
More or less.
And you still didn't give us, though, maybe some of the factors in being recognized, or maybe like one incident where somebody came up to you and said this or that, or the most unusual recognition ever?
Actually, well, I'm trying to think that people who've gotten angry.
Right.
A couple of people have gotten very angry.
At you?
Well, usually if they see the cast together, because we'll go out and eat after a show together or whatnot, it's much more, we're much more recognizable. We've walked into restaurants, though, in the neighborhood and whatnot, where audience members are also, and we'll just get little ovations from tables, and you sort of graciously try to go to your table in the corner. A couple of times, people who've gotten very upset, I think, just by the name of the show, and you say, well, come see it, it's fun, it's a comedy, you know, don't take offense.
It's true.
You know?
My 80-year-old grandfather loved it.
That's right.
Really?
Absolutely.
Pam, what's the biggest reward of your whole career, your whole life? The big satisfaction, the big whatever, the big reward.
I think when people come up to me, I like that a lot.
That's a big payoff.
Yeah, it is. When they come and they say, I watched you and I really like your show and, you know, you make my day, that really makes me feel good.
And one more time now, that new aspect of your career is being a talk show interviewer, right?
Yes. Focus on women.
All right. Will you be covering, I mean, provocative issues today? Would they do these far-out, no-holds-barred issues, or are you going to keep it kind of straight?
I think we'll keep it straight for now.
Right.
Just for the moment.
And eventually?
Eventually, who knows?
Who knows? I'd like my panel to help me chat with a young man named Steve Simels. I'm going to hold this up on the, as I hold it up on the screen, so Stephen, I want to ask you what you're exploring in Gender Chameleons.
It's more or less the history of androgyny and rock and roll, starting from the
You got to explain that word,
40s.
androgyny, for the few people who don't know the word.
It's basically guys looking like girls and vice versa.
What does that portend, Stephen?
Oh, clearly the end of the world. No, actually, the sort of the thesis of the book is that that it really doesn't mean much anymore. That it may have meant something when it started, but that it's sort of been winding down, and that it's basically, it's showbiz.
But I mean, the encouragement of that, it's got to mean something to the changing times. It's got to have some.
I don't know. I've gone back and forth on that, to tell you the truth. I mean, sometimes I think, yeah, it is the end of the world, and sometimes I think it's just, you know, it's just one more way to market things.
Everybody knows that these rock and rollers deliberately cultivate outrageous images, outlandish, off-the-wall, bizarre images, right? Have any of them ever gone far enough, Stevens, to sort of hurt their career or ruin their career?
No, I can't really say. I think the closest anything like that would have been when Elton John announced he had been bisexual, but that didn't seem to really affect his career one way or the other.
Little Richard, when he was hot, he was
Georgia Peach. Yeah.
He was the most what of all, would you say, in his day? Outrageous.
He was probably, yeah, of all the 50s rockers, he was the most outrageous.
Well, let me ask you, how did he? I mean, I happen to know that a lot of them did get hurt along the way. But how did he manage to remain relatively unscathed?
Because he gave it up and went into the ministry.
That helped, right?
Yeah. He's done that a couple times. Whenever he feels like, you know, like he's getting a little tired, and then he always changes his mind and comes back. Currently, he's back. You know? So that kind of deflects criticism, I think, if you, you know.
Publishers, Opera House?
Yeah.
Let me start. Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm really delighted to be on with the people from Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, because
Your kind of people.
Because actually the reason I wrote the book is because when I was in college I was mistaken for a lesbian once, and that was sort of the inspiration for the book. So.
Were you unhappy with that?
I wasn't thrilled. No. I mean, you know, my girlfriend, we both had very long hair and kind of, you know, the same kind of Jewish features, and I frankly was appalled. I mean, a blind man could have seen the difference between us with a cane, I thought. But, so we were making out in the back of the dormitory, and someone said later, "Did you see those two girls making out?" And I said, "Oh."
Would you believe that Woody Allen started out like this on his chair? Let's have it again. But there was a clean, squeaky period of teenage idols. There was a period of, why was there such a period of Fabian and Paul Anka and Frankie Avalon and people like that in that...
I think it was just a reaction. I mean, you know, I mean, part of it was just the fact that a lot of the more outrageous ones had either died or quit or gone into the army or whatever, so there was a sort of a vacuum waiting to be filled. But, you know, the pendulum swings back and forth, you know, inevitably, so I think that's really what it was.
Can anybody in America today still be shocked? I mean,
I was shocked by Marlon at the top of the show, frankly.
Really?
I don't know.
I mean, could anybody be shocked by Boy George's fashions or by Mick Jagger's prancing anymore?
I tell you the truth, when something like the National Star runs an article where they're giving you, you know, tips on how to achieve the Boy George look.
Right.
I don't think this is likely to scare anybody anymore. You know?
No more?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just...
Let me go right down the line and start, of course, with the lady who's an interviewer herself, besides having her own TV show, Pamela Kay of Another World.
Yeah.
We're chatting here with...
Another World, yeah.
Chatting about Another World. And also a TV show called...
Focus on Women.
Focus on Women. What do you want to ask or say of Mr. Stephen Simels and Gender Chameleons? Androgyny.
It's a lovely Christmas gift.
In rock and roll. What's your feeling on the man or the subject?
I think it should be fascinating. I think it's fascinating. But, you know, the Beatles and their haircut and the neighbor jackets were considered very strange in their days, you know? So it'll be interesting to find out, you know, 10 years from now.
Do the Beatles and Michael Jackson have anything in common?
If they gave dramatic readings from their bank accounts, I think.
Millions of dollars.
Billions, right?
Yeah, well, you know.
Yeah. Miss Meghan Robinson.
Well, I'm fascinated because the whole history of androgyny has, through the ages, I mean, this is an extraordinary period of time that you've chosen, just with the whole idea of the rock culture. Right. You know,
but it is older than that, for sure.
Much older, and I find that fascinating because, you know, court jesters and things like that in medieval and Renaissance times, I think part of that whole...
Or all boys playing all the women's part in Shakespeare.
In Shakespeare.
Sure.
It goes back for ages. Ages and ages.
What would you say to the concerned parents out there, Stephen, those that are very worried about
Don't let your kids stay out late with the car.
No, I mean, if they're very, very worried about their kids emulating the lifestyles of their rock and roll idols.
I tell you the truth, I think traditionally, one of the functions, well, partly that, and partly one of the functions of rock and roll traditionally has always been to give kids who are perhaps, you know, not not the sort of in kids, you know, the kids who are sort of like socially maladjusted a little bit. The function of rock and roll has often been to give those kind of kids an area where they can fit in. And so on that level, it's valuable, I think.
You know your stuff. Let me just show one page. The first page of the book is called Gender Chameleons. Who are these charming? I want to get a feeling from Arnold and Jonathan, if we can. Who are these charming people over here?
That's Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics, who's been described as being insecure in her masculinity.
Right.
And that's Motley Crue. Their good taste is timeless, as you can see from it.
And that's Arnie Kolodner, who might have a thought for...
Kolodner, yeah. Well, I think I remember as a child just loving watching Flip Wilson do his Geraldine character. I mean, you know, the kids all loved him and it was fine. And in our show, watching Charles Busch play all of those different women, he really plays them. You know, he's playing the part of a woman, and it's just wonderful to watch. By the end of the show, you believe it completely.
Really? You know where Flip Wilson got his gowns? From Milton Berle.
Yeah.
Milton Berle's old gowns, really.
Milton wants them back.
Milton wants them back, right? Mr. Jonathan Cuminsky.
You know, I'm wondering, I see it's focused on entertainers, and, you know, it seems to me with today's freedom and that entertainers are always outrageous or flamboyant, and I could more see it today with them, but how is it affecting the whole mainstream of society? are regular people with regular jobs, androgynous now, more expressive of it? Or is this just focused on the entertainment field?
I read an interview with Jan Morris. You know, Jan Morris is she's a real-life transsexual who's now a woman, and she was saying that perhaps Boy George and people like that were sort of ushering in an era of at least, you know, greater tolerance for people who are not generally socially acceptable, and I think that's a little overstated. I really do. I
think he's got a great future with this kind of a book. I think so, right? It's a hot subject. Give us one more gender bender fact. Any little known gender bender fact on anybody, Elvis or anybody important.
You know, Elvis dyed his hair.
Did he?
Yes, he was actually kind of reddish blonde, but he wanted to look like Tony Curtis. So he dyed it.
Or Yul Brynner. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, if you want to see a good show, go to the Provincetown Playhouse. And if you want to watch this young lady on what channel? On the
NBC.
And on the talk show, I meant?
Channel 31, New York.
What day, what night? Do you know yet?
Friday nights at 6:30.
Oh, that's a good talk show lady, right? And Jonathan Cuminsky, whenever you're on the block, come down here with Richie or without Richie Havens. We're going to do a brief intermission, and then we're going to give you a star of stars at the piano. One of the real good facts about New York nightlife, whatever is left of New York nightlife, is a man named Paul Roth who plays at the Grand Hyatt. You're going to hear some great music as soon as I say that. We'll be back with Paul and with some very charming people as we thank a brilliant panel of non-androgyny people. Stay with us.
Lady Martin paint is a quality paint created especially for women. It's delicately scented, comes in white, and 16 delicious decorator colors, like pineapple and champagne. Covers in one coat, dries